Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Football House again as we prepare for another double header 2025 Total Energies Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers against Madagascar for the October window. The coach is here again to take us through his squad, the players that he has invited for these two matches from next week. And after he unveils the squad, we will entertain questions from the press as well. So, Coach?
Thank you, everybody. First of all, it's always good to see a full room. I think that shows the interest in what we're doing with the Scorpions, and it's good for you guys to sort of relay that message out to the fans to keep everyone involved. Coming into these games, as is usual, as we get sort of into naming a squad again, as we start to move into a football season, we've had one or two little challenges just in terms of some injuries, some guys maybe not getting as many minutes as we would have liked. You know, people who at the start of the season were maybe in really good form getting their minutes, but the last 3, 4, 5 weeks maybe not getting so many minutes. And then also finding that balance of, look, people who are in form, we want to give them their opportunity to step up to the national team and show us what they've got. But at the same time, keeping a level of consistency within the team, because if you're changing people every time, you lose that connection between the layers of the team. So it's trying to get that balance right. But we're very pleased with the group we've been able to name for this international window. And we believe that it brings the right mix of maturity, sort of excitement, energy, skill within the group. And we're confident that the guys we're bringing together are going to be able to do a good job in the upcoming games. Okay? So, in terms of the squad itself, we're naming a 23-man squad for this international window. So beginning with the goalkeepers, we're maintaining the goalkeepers from the last camp, so Ibrahima Jarju, Lamine Seydi, and Sheikh Sibi. In defense, we're having Ibu Toure. We welcome back Jacob Mendy, Joseph Cisse, Daddy Dudu Gay, Mamadou Lion Njai, Omar Colley, and James Gomez. In the midfield, Alassane Mane, Mamadou Badjo, Saidu Khan, Ebu Adams, Ibrahima Darbo. In the forward positions, Musa Barrow, Ablai Jallo, Aliou Fadera, Yankuba Minte, and coming for the first time, Suleiman Kamara. And in the striking positions, Abdoulaye Cisse, Ali Sow, and we welcome back Mohamed Badamoussi. So that's the 23-player squad. Like we said, we're very sort of happy with it. It's great to have someone like Jacob Mendy coming back in after his injury, and also quite excited for the Gambian supporters to see young Suleiman Kamara of Racing Santander in La Liga 2 in Spain. So an exciting young winger who we think can give us some good options. So that's the squad, guys. I'm open to any and all questions, so you can fire away. Yeah, so it's a good question. Thank you. So there's things we're happy that have been going on in recent matches. There's things that we are frustrated with. So I think, as you've said, you know, some of the football we've been playing, me as a coach, you know, I don't want to speak for other people, but as a coach, one of the things you like to say is, hey, I like watching my own team play. You know, sometimes when you're with a team that have to, you know, play negative football, to use that term, it's not even as a coach as enjoyable to watch. But for us, we're liking a lot of the stuff we're seeing on the field. For me as a coach, I enjoy watching the guys play, which tells me what we're doing in training is quite good. But we need to be cleaner around the penalty box. There's no doubt about that. You know, we're creating a lot of chances. You know, our passes into the final third, our box entries, our expected goals are all a lot higher than they've been over recent years. But we have to convert the chances. Okay? And so definitely looking into this training camp, we're pleased that the game falls on a Friday this time and not on the Wednesday like the last time. Prior to playing Comoros, we had one training session together as an entire squad. Whereas this time we're going to have at least 3 with everybody there and an additional 1 with about 70% there. So We believe that extra time is going to help that connection, just to make sure we get the shots on target and we convert those chances we're creating. So that's the first thing. Defensively, the one big area that we need to tidy up on is set pieces. When you look back to June, we conceded a set piece in both games from deliveries. So there were crosses into the box or a corner kick. And we said, okay, we need to tidy up on that. And actually in the last camp we did. Any balls played in from like delivered set pieces, we dealt with absolutely fine in the last camp. The problem that came in September, however, was direct free kicks were our undoing. But you can't concede a set piece in every game and hope to be successful. In open play, we're not conceding that many chances. That's not saying we're not conceding any. There are some, but look, if you want to be a front foot team playing, a pressing sort of toe-to-toe type of football, you are going to give up some chances where players, your goalkeeper's expected to make a good save, defenders are expected to defend well 1v1, etc. We know this. This isn't a mistake. This is something that will happen in this style of football. And so we've been generally probably about 85–90% satisfied with the defensive structure, but we need to tidy up set pieces. If we're conceding set pieces, it's like a free goal for the opponent. So yeah, we need to be tidier around our attacking, just in the final 20 meters, and we need to be just better organized in those defensive moments from set pieces. So I think everyone would agree that when you come into any team dynamic, you've got to get used to the way of working. So whether you start a new job, that you have to work with other people. So in the media, you've got to work with other people. And your first day on the job, you maybe don't know everything that your new radio station or TV station do. And you've got to get used to other people before you hit top performance. Yeah, that would be an agreeable thing in most walks of life. In football, it's even more so because tactically, one team does not play the same as another team. Yeah, so if you look at Arsenal, they don't play the same as Manchester City or Barcelona. So when you move from one team to another, you've got to integrate into that. So when you have someone like Abdoulaye Cissé who comes into the national team, we were really pleased with him in the last camp. But he still is evolving and developing that connection with the teammates around him. Historically, for me, players who come to their very first national team camp don't usually get lots of minutes. Sometimes they do if they're a really high quality player. If they turn up and hey, they have 10 out of 10 week and they're just the best player in the training sessions, then yes, they get their minutes. But the nature of football is it usually takes more than 2 or 3 days to integrate into a new team. Yes, all of these guys are Gambian, but that doesn't mean they know how to play well together yet. And so we're really pleased with Abdoulaye. And so do I expect he has a better chance of getting minutes in this camp compared to the last camp? Yes, because he will have had more time with his teammates. He'll know the passes people like to play. His teammates will know the type of runs he needs to play. Because you've got to remember, the guys like Ebu Adams or Musa Barrow or Ablai Jallow, when they turned up on the Monday, Tuesday before we played Comoros, that was the first time any of them had ever played with Abdoulaye Cissé. And so you can understand that the connection isn't quite there yet. It's not a computer game. You don't just throw them out there. So, the young guys, it's not a must that when you come to the national team, you play in your first camp. Sometimes it's about integrating, and over the long term, you become a really valuable asset for us. But like I said, that doesn't rule out. Look, if someone turns up and they're just, destroying it in training, then of course they play. Yeah, of course they play. Like ultimately, the only thing you can do is chase performance in football. We always say in football that the result is something that lives out there that we don't have control over. A result can happen for any reason. You can play the best game of your season and lose. You can play the worst game of your season and win. I think you've all seen this in football at all levels of the game. And so as a team, we want to win as many games as we can, but we also know we don't control that. We don't control winning because it's not like when you have to go to your job. There's no one, for example, in your line of work stopping you from doing a news report. Yeah. Whereas in sports, you've got 11 guys trying to stop you from doing what you want to do. So for us, we just have to chase performance. We think the performances are moving towards where we want them to be. Like we've said before, there's a lot of good stuff we're seeing on the field. We're creating a lot of chances. It would be a lot more worrying if we were not creating the chances. If we were playing nice, passing, moving football, but we were not creating chances, that would be more of a concern. But we're creating chances, and when you create chances, you know that I've just got a feeling that there's a game coming up where we're really potentially going to blow an opponent out of the water because we're doing a lot of the right things. We just need to add that final little bit of cleaner football in the final 20 meters of it, and we're going to start seeing big results. But also, you got to remember, is that comparatively, the last 4 games, okay, we want them to be better, but I think in the previous, 8 games, there was no wins or something like that. So it was like 1 win in the previous 10, and no wins in the previous 5. So the fact that we've changed the playing system, the fact that we've brought in a number of new and younger players, and we've actually improved in general on the results compared to the previous sort of 12 months, we're taking positive steps, but that's not, we need it to be more. We always need it to be more, but performances are getting close to where we need them to be, and over the long term, if your performances are where you need them to be, results follow. In the 2 camps we've done so far, it's been 2 different issues in set pieces, because in the first camp, the issue was defending crosses, which we worked on a bit in the second camp in the short time, and actually that was not an issue at all from set pieces against Comoros or Tunisia from corners and from wide delivery free kicks. We were pretty comfortable. So we nailed that issue that had presented itself in June, but then a new issue cropped up was the direct free kicks, that maybe the organization of the wall, the numbers in the wall, the numbers marking for the second chance, wasn't as tidy as it needed to be and as clear as it needed to be. So all set pieces, but actually 2 different issues arised in June and in September. But we need to be tighter on that, because for me, I'm a big person on set pieces. If you look at my teams in the past, we score a lot of set pieces and we don't concede many. And so to have conceded a set piece in every game is something we need to do a lot better on. And we're going to be, again, putting a big emphasis on it in this training camp to make sure. Because if we cut those 4 goals out, we probably have a lot more points than we otherwise would have. You know what I mean? And so that's a big thing. And for me, it's interesting, you're asking about specific player sort of profile roles. But if I were to ask everyone, we must have 25, 30 people in this room. So you talk about, a number 6. If I ask everybody in this room to write down the qualities of a number 6, I think we would have 25 pieces of paper with 25 different profiles written on it, because there's lots of different number 6s. I think, in Ebu Adams, I think we've got a very good guy who can play in that role. Obviously, we welcome Saidu Khan and Mamadou Badjo into this squad as well. Both of them have the potential to play in that deeper role because they can be aggressive to win the ball. But what we want is players who can play both sides of the game. We don't want someone who can just tackle and do nothing else. Because when you win the ball, you need to have the ability to play the passes forward, to make the runs. And it's the same. You talk about, you asked a question about more defensive players on the pitch. But what does that mean? Because does that mean players who can protect their own penalty box? But then are they able to go and press the game? You know what I mean? In football, you cannot have everything. You cannot be a team who don't allow space behind you and go and press high. You have to choose. Do you want to go and press high, or do you want to sit in a low block? You can't play a low block and a high block at the same time. And so for us, we make choices about how we play. I think you saw over the last 2 games how those choices can be modified, not changed, but modified, because the height of our team in terms of playing position on the field against Comoros was different than it was against Tunisia. In Tunisia, we dropped off a little bit more. We didn't go into a low block, but we probably came back 15 meters on the pitch. And so it's about having guys who can play both sides of the game, offense and defense. It's about guys who ultimately work for each other as well, because, you know, you're not going to say to a number 6, hey, you've got this 15 by 15 box, never leave it. Because sometimes he's got to leave it. He's got to go and deal with a problem or an opportunity. And when he does that, someone else needs to be intelligent enough to come in and cover that space. So, you know, for me, I like what we've got. We've got some really exciting young players who are going to come through and push some of the senior players as well. But you also got to remember, international football is not club football. If you were the coach of Real Madrid and you needed a certain type of profile in a player, you simply get your checkbook out and say, here's 100 million euros, I want to bring that player to my club. You don't get to do that in international football. You get to assess what is available to you and use what you think can come together in a good way. We've never had an overloaded squad. In essence, we always underloaded a little bit, which gives us flexibility when something changes to make decisions. Now, you asked specifically about Ibrahima Darbo. So leading into the last camp, if you looked at, they played on Tuesday and then they played on Saturday. So on the Tuesday, so you mentioned the game he played on the Saturday, but you didn't mention the game he played 5 days before, where he came out of the game after, was it 30 or 40 minutes, with a subluxated shoulder. So I don't know if you know what a subluxated shoulder is. It's not quite a dislocation. It's where your shoulder comes out of its socket, but in the moment, your ligaments sort of pull it back in. Yeah. So it's not a nice injury. It's pretty painful, but it's not a full dislocation. So on the Tuesday, Ibrahima subluxated his shoulder, and we got the information about that, and he was going for scans and discussing treatment options. He obviously didn't train for the 2 or 3 days, and we obviously then have to name a squad. So on the Wednesday, I think on the Thursday, in fact, we name a squad. Ibrahima had subluxated his shoulder on the Tuesday. He did not train on the Wednesday or Thursday, and it looked like he was going to be out. He, however, did then attempt training on the Friday at the request of his club coach, heavily strapped, and he played and played well, even under a little bit of pain, on the Saturday for his club, Frosinone. Me and Ibrahima had a conversation, and I said, look, how does it feel? Do you think it's okay? And he was like, well, it's a little bit uncomfortable, but I didn't think I'd be able to play, even for his club, but I was able to play for 70 minutes. And so, yeah, as long as it's well strapped, it's okay. And so that made the decision easy for us. We'd given ourselves a little bit of flexibility in the squad, and we invited him to come. And then he came and, you know, did quite well in the game. So for us, this is the stuff. And look, I don't expect people outside the room to see these things. You know, this is information that as a coach, as a federation, we've got to deal with, because things change. You know what I mean? Somebody wakes up in the morning and has a bad illness. You didn't know that the day before. You do know it the next day. You got to make decisions. So with Ibrahima, looked like he wasn't going to be ready. That changed pretty quickly. He was ready. He wanted to come. He came. He was a valuable part of the squad. You ask about this camp, who is out injured. So Hamza Barry, unfortunately, went for a scan on his hamstring yesterday. There's a little bit of blood showing on the scans. I spoke to him this morning. He's not going to be in his match day squad, or at least he maybe is on the bench tomorrow. But yeah, the hamstring's not in a great position. He needs to rest and recover. He's out. Alassane Diatta is a player that we would like to have in this squad. However, there's a couple of things with Alassane. You've seen he's been in and out of his team at Notts County recently. He suffered a pretty heavy concussion a few weeks ago, and it meant he's been out. He sort of came back a bit too early a couple of weeks ago, and then he was out again for 2 games, and then he played again 2 days ago and got the goal. Alassane, first of all, was his head. The concussion was a proper concussion. So a few weeks ago, the concussion, I'm pleased to say, has recovered. He's not getting headaches anymore. However, because he's not really played a lot in the last few weeks, you might have seen, and if you watched the game for Notts County, he came off of heavy cramp. And so again, Alessana and I had a good conversation where he just doesn't feel he's at 100%. And he would rather wait until he's 100% before he comes, which he knows is stepping up a level to play for the Scorpions. You know, it's a higher level than at Notts County. And so we decided this camp not quite yet because he's not 100%. I'm trying to think who other injury-wise there is. Just some players who are out who have been involved recently. Seni Sanyang is fit, but since the last camp hasn't played any minutes for his club side. Adama Sidibe obviously has done really well for the Scorpions recently, but hasn't played a single minute due to suspension at St Johnstone. He got a red card and has been out suspended, so he's out. I'm trying to think, is there any other obvious ones that you want me to comment on? There's only a few injuries. It's more the guys who are missing out's more about they haven't been getting the minutes we would like them to get. Yeah. So I think firstly, everybody, it's not just me, who is disappointed that we're not scoring more goals. The players themselves are disappointed because, you know, at club level, some of our players are in hot form at club level. But look, I said this earlier in the press conference, I'm really pleased that the game is on Friday. Last time when we play on Wednesday, that connection just doesn't quite develop as much. You know what I mean? It's a bit like, and I know you guys might say, oh, but, you know, Musa Barrow and Ali So have known each other played together for 10 years. But it's a little bit like, say you owned a car 5 years ago, yeah? And you haven't driven it for 5 years, and you've been driving a completely different type of car. Or maybe you've been driving a left-hand drive car for 5 years, and all of a sudden you get back into a right-hand drive car. On day one and day two, it feels strange, not so? It's like, oh, I need to get used to this again. It's the same thing when you come back to your national team, because you got to remember, every day in training, you know, Musa's training with his players in his club in Saudi, Ali's training with his players in Turkey, you know, Aliu in Italy. So they get used to all those movements and just the rhythm of the game. And then they come back together, and for the last camp, for example, leading into Comoros, they had one 55-minute training session to try to get used to driving the car again, yeah? And so you can understand why it's not maybe at 100%. And so for us, we're really pleased that the game's a bit later in the window. For me, I think all international games should be at their earliest on the Friday. I think playing an international match on a Wednesday is harmful to African football because we want our teams to go and play well at AFCON and World Cups, but the European teams don't play on a Wednesday. You don't see England or Spain being asked to play on the Wednesday after one day's training. They always play on the Friday, the Saturday, and then again on the Tuesday. Whereas for us, we're being asked to play on a Wednesday and then a Sunday, which means in the entire training camp, we had 3 training sessions. So this time we're going to have more. So we expect the connection between the players to be better against Madagascar, and we expect to be able to use that car analogy to really accelerate. Okay? You ask about test games. The nature of international football now is changing. If you can tell me, if you look at the FIFA calendar for the next 2 years, the only window that doesn't have competitive games in it at this moment in time is next June. Because we have games in October, no space for friendlies. November, no space for friendlies. March, no space for friendlies. Yes, June, there's nothing fixed because they had to move AFCON, okay? But FIFA also, because they've got their Club World Cup going on, they might say, hey, you're not allowed to play internationals in June. We don't know yet, okay? September, no space for friendlies. October, no space for friendlies. November is the playoffs. So depends if you're in the World Cup playoffs or not, if there's space for friendlies. So 10 years ago, there used to be space for friendlies. But now there's not. And you even see now that, okay, CAF don't have a Nations League yet, but what we have started seeing is the FIFA series, which you saw coming in March, where some teams go and play these little mini tournaments against, but again, they're semi-competitive. So, yeah, there's not as much time for friendlies. And as a coach, that's frustrating. For a federation, that's frustrating. Because trust me, we want to play the games because we want to give these players an opportunity. But the calendar suggests we just don't have the space. So we'll do it when it's possible. But again, we're tied down to the time that FIFA allow us, and it's getting smaller and smaller every year.